Your first boss is sort of the mom or dad of your career. They bring you into this crazy world, they show you the ropes, they do that with love and care, but they can't help passing on their bad habits along with their good ones. And my first boss had a bunch of bad habits. One of them was he thought to do a good job, you had to answer every phone call and every email every day. It was so bad, I watched him walk out of a lot of family dinners to talk on the phone. And as I kind of went out in my career, I took this straight from him because I wanted to do a good job. But the problem was that after 3 years of answering every phone call and hitting inbox 0 every night, I was completely burned out. I was so burned out at the old age of 25 that when I discovered these things called tiny houses, I said, I've got to have this. And I'm going to put it in the woods, and I'm going to make sure there's no people around, and it definitely can't have Wi-Fi. And I'm going to go there, and I'm going to escape. And that dream, which started as a hobby, has now turned into this company called Getaway. So Getaway designs these tiny houses. We put them in the woods just outside the city, and we rent them out by the night to folks who are just looking to disconnect and recharge. And we've actually sold about 4,000 nights so far to people who are looking to simply do nothing for once. And as I've ran this business, I've talked to hundreds, maybe thousands of our customers, and it's taught me that my feeling of burnout is now the rule and not the exception for a whole bunch of us who now take our jobs home in our pockets every night and are struggling to deal with this new era of work and life. You see, we've lived through a few of these eras already in our lives. We lived through the 9 to 5, and this was pretty simple. This was you work at work and you live at home. And we've lived through what I call the Wall Street era, which is you work at work and you work at work and you work at work. It's like Rihanna, you never go home. And now we're in this other era. It's what I call the Silicon Valley era. And that's like you work at work, you work at home, you work at SoulCycle, you work from a camper van, nobody cares. You go to the office once in a while and there's a party going on. And this sounds great. It sounds flexible and it sounds fun, but this is leaving us completely burned out. So this speech is about how do we fix that? Because we've got to do something because it's become a bit insane. But first things first, let's establish the premise that balance is lost. 2/3 of Americans don't use their vacation days for some reason. 3/4 of kids say their parents can't quit working when they come home at night. 1/3 of couples, maybe including you or me, are in couples that argue about how to balance work time versus quality time. And it's not just that this is something to complain about. It's not just something to whine about. This loss of balance is actually really bad for us. It's so bad that if you don't take time off, you're significantly at higher risk for heart attack. You're at significantly higher risk for depression. And it's not just bad for us. It's bad for our families. It's no wonder 60% of folks, when they're surveyed, say that their families are happier and healthier after they take time off. And here's the really nuts part. It's not that this lack of balance is just bad for us and bad for our families. It's actually bad for our work. Did you know that people who take more time off per year, if you take just 10 hours more vacation time per year, your average annual performance evaluation goes up 8 points. So where are we? Your boss is your mom somehow. We don't have balance. That's bad. Okay, great. Let me tell you one more thing that you probably already know, which is that technology did this to us. Technology is the culprit. And we can start here by looking at the usage of different phrases over time. So these charts will be comparing the usage of a word over time. So we'll start with email, which basically in the Reagan administration was unheard of. Through the Clinton administration, kind of skyrockets, and we would expect that. If we look at internet, similar pattern, taking off in the same way. If we look at cell phone, same thing. If we look at inbox, same thing. And here's the thing. Not every word looks like this. These words all have the same shape. They're pretty related. You might expect that. But what comes just after these words come into usage is this crazy thing, work-life balance. And so what I'm getting at here is two things. One is that seems to be a problem of our time, that we shouldn't feel bad that we're all trying to figure out how much work time is enough work time, how much lifetime is enough lifetime, because these charts aren't that old. It's only the last decade or two that we're talking about this. And the second thing I'm getting at is that technology seems to be a primary suspect in why we're all worried about work-life balance. And so what are we doing about it? It seems like we're all chasing this unicorn called work-life balance, but we don't know what it means, and we don't know how to achieve it. And I'm pretty convinced, after plumbing the depths of my own burnout and talking to so many of these Getaway customers that are trying to solve this problem, is that it's because the way we think about work-life balance is wrong. There's a couple things wrong with it. The first thing that's wrong with it is we think about it as a zero-sum game. We think that the more we work, the less we live, the more we live, the less we work, and that's not right. Science, history, our own experience shows us that if our work life is healthy, it can support life outside of work, and the reverse. The second thing that's wrong with it is that when we talk about work-life balance, we mostly talk about work invading life, which is definitely a problem. But there's also a problem of life invading work in the form of 24/7 distractions, and the data shows that these are on the rise and they're really bad for us. They're so bad for us that distractions at work, studies have showed, are now worse for us than actually smoking pot on the way into work. It's crazy. And the third thing that's wrong with this work-life balance idea is it puts us on this roller coaster. We know we want it, we feel guilty that we don't have it, and we catch ourselves working really hard, and then we do something drastic to correct for it. We go to happy hour for too many hours. We take these binge vacations to Cancun. We quit our jobs via the JetBlue emergency slide. It's crazy. And so for me, this work-life balance thing is kind of like the Hyperloop. It's a nice idea. I wish it existed, but I don't think it's going to happen in our lifetime. But I have a different way of thinking about work-life balance, and it makes two tweaks to the way we currently think about it. The first tweak is it recognizes three primary modes of things that need to be balanced in our lives. And the second tweak is that it recognizes the problem isn't really the amount of work or the amount of life, but it's that everything now spills into everything else. And so what are these three modes? I call them production, coordination, and leisure. Production is focused work that you most often do alone. Coordination is interaction with others about work. And leisure, of course, is not work. These three things used to be relatively contained. Now they completely spill over into each other. We answer emails while we're supposed to be focused on a project. We watch cat videos while we're in meetings. We have meetings while we're on vacation. And as we do this, we think we're fitting more into our days. I'm doing more emails, more IMs, more projects. My boss is going to be happier with me. I'm just going to do this one thing. And we think we're doing so much more, but the problem is we're not. And when you do all these things at the same time, it makes all of them worse. And the example I think is pretty apt is the sushi burrito. You take two things that are perfectly good on their own. I mean, there's bad sushi and there's bad burritos, don't get me wrong, but if you get the best sushi from Tokyo and you get the best burrito from Oaxaca and you put it into a blender, it's not gonna be good. And that's what we've done with our work life. And so this deep balance model that I've been thinking about requires us not just to recognize these three modes of life, production, coordination, and leisure, but to actively defend them from spilling into each other. And I have a couple of ideas that I think will get us started on how to do that. The first thing we need to do is defend our production time. We need to start each week by scheduling long blocks of time dedicated to our most important projects. And this feels like a luxury with so many things going on in life, but how can you advance in your career and in your work if you're not setting aside time for the most important projects? And companies need to get in on this as the second thing. Companies need to set aside times where meetings aren't allowed to be scheduled. At Getaway, we've started doing meeting-free mornings in reaction to the brain science that shows you're most able to do creative and deep thought when you first get out of bed in the morning. And my third idea is this thing called production days, which we invented at Getaway that I hope others will adopt. A production day works just like a vacation day. You fill out a form, you can be wherever you want, you're not meant to be interrupted. But unlike a vacation day, a production day has a meaty project attached to it and a deliverable at the end of the day. So that's production. And then after that, we need to fix our coordination. Fixing coordination is really, coordination is sort of the negative space of this deep balance model, because in most organizations, coordination takes over everything. And so fixing it is really about defending our production time and defending our leisure time. But that too is going to take adjustments. If we're going to right-size coordination, we need to admit that every email can't get a response in minutes, if not seconds. Same thing with instant messages and Slack messages. And the second thing is, to make that work, we have to reintroduce this crazy tool called the telephone for when we do need instant answers. Now, that can feel like a distraction, but if we use it thoughtfully and it helps restrain our emails and our IMs to a reasonable amount of the day, it will be worth the effort. And the third thing we need to do to fix coordination is to quit scheduling unnecessary meetings. And I know you know this already, but if the meeting doesn't have an agenda, cancel it. If the meeting is just a status update, it should be an email. If your meeting doesn't start on time and end on time, don't schedule that meeting again, because people's time is just too valuable to waste in this world. And now we get to the third thing, which is the thing nearest and dearest to my heart, which is we have to fortify our leisure time. Those of us who have vacation days need to take them. The 23% of Americans who don't have vacation days need them. And then, once we have our vacation days and we're on them or we're on holidays, we need to actually disconnect. We need to end this culture of work martyrdom that says, I'll just pound out a few more emails, bro. It'll be great. My boss will love me. Stop it. Take your time off. You need it. It's good for you. It's good for your family. It's good for your work to actually disconnect. And after we do that, we need more holidays. Don't you think we need a national day for Beyonce? And then we're going to go farther. This one I haven't convinced anyone in my company of yet, but I think we need email servers that shut off at night, where you can't send email. I think instead of a vacation autoresponder that lets email pile up while you're on vacation, we need a vacation setting that obliterates the email when you're on vacation. And it sends a polite message, please try again later. Jon's not in the office for a couple of weeks. And then we'll go farther. And just like we have these smoke-free zones in public, we need cell phone-free zones in public so we can end the secondhand distractions that have taken over every corner of the world. And finally, the last thing we need to do, in a totally shameless plug, is we need to go on more getaways, where we can lock our cell phones in cell phone lock boxes and disconnect and recharge with the ones we love. Now, if we do all this, if we defend our production time, if we fix our coordination time, if we fortify our leisure time, we will have reclaimed the barriers that technology broke down between these things. And we will have fixed this era. We may have even invented a new era of work and life, where we take the best of the 9 to 5, these separate spheres of life, and we mix it with the best of Silicon Valley, the flexibility. You should be able to work where you want, when you want. But if we want to do that and live through it and remain sane, we have to make a plan. We have to make a plan with ourselves, we have to make a plan with our boss, with our coworkers, with our employees, for how we're going to contain these three things: production, coordination, and leisure to their own realms. That's my idea for how we can achieve deep balance. It has been a pleasure producing this talk. It's been a pleasure coordinating it at you. I wish you all good leisure. Thank you very much.